Hey, it's Fox from InfernoFox Gaming. As of the recording of this video and publishing of it, we have just come back from the Midwest Gaming Classic. And funny enough, this is actually our third year going to this excellent convention located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it was myself, it was also Jason, the 13th of the InfernoCast, as well as two of our really good friends, Runjin Run, and our buddy Matt. Not Mike, Matt. And we really had a great time taking a look at everything that the convention had to offer. But before we get into that, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell for notifications. Y'all know the drill. But when we got there, we of course visited on a Saturday, which was the busiest day, and we arrived in Milwaukee at about 10 a.m. or so, which is when the doors open. Unlike last year, there was like barely any line to get into the building, at least on the side that we approached for the convention center. That was a different case once we actually got into the building and you pre-ordered your tickets line, and it kind of wrapped around quite a long distance at the convention center. But fortunately, thanks to the great volunteer staff for the Midwest Gaming Classic, the line was super quick. It took maybe no more than like 20 minutes to get through, have them scan my phone for our tickets, you know the drill. So the first thing that the four of us went to was the most important part. And that was the shopping. Yes, we have a lot of pickups today to go through, but before we get through that, I just want to talk through the overall experience at Midwest Gaming Classic and the vendors provided over here. It was another excellent year, another set of fantastic vendors who had a lot of really great games, as well as some really fantastic looking art as well. The only regret that I have is that I didn't see Canvas Quest, one of my favorite stores that has pins on Etsy. And if they were there, I probably would have picked up a few. I have a problem. I am admitting it. That's the first step to dealing with it, but I'm not going to be taking other steps because I love Canvas Quest's pins because they look cool. They weren't there, but that just means I'll have to do a separate order through them on Etsy. Link in the description below. And no, I'm not sponsored. I'm just a huge fan of them. I did see another one of the fantastic Etsy vendors that has really great content, such as like the figure standees. I'll also make sure to link them in the description below. But again, a number of the vendors having great games, nearly all of them, of course, used, because, hey, this is a used video game sort of convention and swap, what have you. Got a lot of really great deals with them. Ran out of my cash really quick, but I'm still really happy with the purchases that I made. We arrived into the actual shopping area around 10:30, 11. We got done shopping at around 2:30, so we did a lot of it. We went through all of the lines and everything like that to see what they had to offer. After that point, we went and checked out a couple of the exhibits, which that was my big regret last year. I didn't check out any of the exhibits. I was just solely focused on shopping. So this time was opposite. We checked out exhibits, the arcades, and even a panel. But the first exhibit that we checked out was the World of Nintendo Retail Store sort of recreation. It was really well done and sort of captures that early 90s vibe of what it was like being in a Toys R Us related sort of retail store, where it featured a lot of Super Nintendo, a lot of Game Boy stuff, and some Nintendo products. It all served to sort of hit the nostalgia bone and remind me just how freaking old I am. Yep, I am that old. I'm still yelling at Cloud. But it was really cool to see that and everything that it offered. We also checked out a couple of the gaming stations. Had stuff like Vectrex and like ColecoVision, up to the newest systems, of course, with the Nintendo Switch featuring a number of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate displays, and also had some arcade units, which I always love checking out. They had a few of the Tetris arcade consoles, some Donkey Kong, and obviously more contemporary recent ones and fighting games. But again, I'm weird in that I really enjoy the old school Nintendo stuff and Tetris. My only qualm with the arcades is that there was nothing open at any of the arcade stations. All of them were being used, so that tells me that they were doing a great job of bringing the arcades that people really wanted to play, or they weren't doing anything to help moderate the overall usage. Either way, I don't know. That's not really a complaint. That's more of an observation. It just shows how popular these arcades are and how well the convention does to cater to stuff. From then out, we did make sure to go to the panel area where, after about 4.5 hours of carrying a very, very heavy backpack over my shoulders, it was a welcome relief to finally sit down in these chairs and rest and watch one of my favorite set of creators come together for their podcast for the first time, having a panel together, and that was the JRPG Pursuit crew. This is Dala of Dala Games, Emily of Orbology, and Brandon of Just the Gems. They have a weekly podcast here on YouTube. I'm going to make sure to link them in the description below, as well as all of their individual channels. Love their JRPG content because I'm a JRPG nut, and hopefully you are too. The overall topic was a half an hour, and if you've been watching or listening to their podcasts tend to run about an hour and a half of JRPG goodness, and they were giving some really good recommendations for getting into the JRPG hobby for both the sort of a cheaper way, a more modern, cheaper way, and a more expensive way. And huge credit to Brandon, especially because he really made a great recommendation with Illusion of Gaia. I loved when the Quintet trilogy gets some love, and I can't emphasize how nice and down to earth and how well they interacted both with me and other fans before and after the panel. Super duper nice. It was a real treat to be able to meet with them, and especially them being able to get a nice little selfie with me as well. I've had the wonderful pleasure to work with Brandon and Emily, especially on collaborations before, and hopefully will again in the future, as well as Dala in the future. So thank you guys again for being so welcoming. But let's talk about pickups. It was a red letter day for pickups, and I definitely went over my budget because I did bring $300 in cash, and yeah, like I said, that went by real quick, and so I had to rely on Mr. Credit Card for a little bit. But hear me out, these pickups are excellent, and they're split into two sets. The first set is anything non-Super Nintendo related, because I have a series here on my channel featuring specifically the attempts to be able to regain my Super Nintendo collection. I'm going to do a separate video on that because it was a very fruitful trip. But beyond that, let's talk about what games and more that I picked up during my Sojourn 2 Midwest Gaming Classic. And we're going to start off with, and bear with me guys, this is going to be not the most exciting, and that's going to be game manuals. We've got Wario Woods, we have Sonic Advance for the Game Boy, we have Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy as well, and we also have Donkey Kong Land for the Game Boy, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for the Game Boy Advance, and finally Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color. Why these and why only these? I found a few of the vendors that had manuals, and a good number of them, but as I was showing these manuals, they can kind of get pricey when sold separately. So right now I just wanted to focus on some of the game manuals, or the manuals that I was missing for the games, as you can see over my right shoulder, that sort of mean the most to me, or might be a little bit more rare. Still glad to have them, continuing to finish out my overall video game collection to where I want to make sure I've got everything with them. And let's move on to some of the games. We have got the Sonic Classic Collection for the Nintendo DS, and this has the first Sonic the Hedgehog, second 3, and then Knuckles. And I sort of unknowingly created a full Sonic the Hedgehog DS collection. I don't know why I ended up doing that, but I did, and now I think that this actually completes it. And unlike the Game Boy Advance version of Sonic 1, this version of Sonic and all of them that are on this is actually pretty decent. I also like that Sonic 3 is on here because for the music rights issues, Sonic 3 tends to not be ported as much, and the nice thing is I believe this actually has the OG music from the Sega Genesis. Very glad to be able to have that. And speaking of DS, I have an awesome unopened version of Castlevania Order of Ecclesia starring Amy Lee over here. This was a probably my favorite of the Castlevania Dominus collection that had just re-released as said collection. Or like late last year, 2024. This one, though, especially, I enjoyed a number of the twists on some of the gameplay elements, and of course, it's Castlevania with the Metroidvania-style gameplay. It was great. Pretty tough, actually. One of the hardest of the Metroidvanias that I've played. This I actually didn't get from the convention. No, my buddy Runjin Run actually had this unsealed, and he very, very graciously offered to save me $20 for what the complete in box price is on this, which is $120. So again, Runjin Run, thank you so much for working with me on that particular deal. Appreciate it. The next set of pickups are going to focus specifically on the Sega Genesis, because I created the video series of A Nintendo Fanboy Plays Sega Genesis Games, and it really ignited my love for this system. And if you ever sort of gatekept yourself from a system for a particular reason, I recommend you try to see yourself out of that, because you could be limiting yourself to some really great games. And I can say during the early 90s when I was a kid and I was a Mr. Nintendo fanboy and was all incensed about Sega does what Nintendo don't and all that rhetoric, I did keep myself from some really great games. And thankfully, a number of years later, I was able to remedy that. So the first physical game that I have is Earthworm Jim, and I didn't go for this on the recapturing my SNES collections thing, because I do think the Sega Genesis version is the better version. Yes, the music sounds better on the SNES one, but that is it. Because the action is a heck of a lot snappier. It plays a little bit more tighter. The controls feel just a bit better. And I just feel like this was the overall better one. Speaking of tighter action, the next one that I have is Rocket Knight Adventures. This is kind of a little homage to Angry Bird, because he was the one that had really pitched this particular game to me, so much so that I also have the physical copy from Limited Run Games of the Rocket Knight's Adventure Pack, which of course is this. Sparkster, the Super Nintendo sequel of it, and I think there's a third one that it also contains. This one doesn't have the manual. That's okay, I can always eBay that, but really happy to have this physically. The next one that I have physically is Sonic the Hedgehog 1. And this is in a clamshell re-release, because a lot of the Sega Genesis systems that released, I think it was in 1991 and early 92, came with a not-for-resale clamshell package of Sonic the Hedgehog 1. And this is its own particular re-release. And it's cool because, of course, it has this little promo card and the manual. And the game here, all the games that I got looked great. And really glad to have this physically. Speaking of which, this last one is probably one of the ones that I'm really glad to have physically. And I spoke about this because of how later ports either have the music changed or it's just not or ported as often. That is Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And this one, of course, complete in box. My cousin actually had this when I did have a Sega Genesis growing up, but we only had Sonic 2 as well as Sonic and Knuckles. So it was really great to play and combine his Sonic 3 cartridge with my Sonic and Knuckles to have the best version, probably one of the best Sega Genesis games, Sonic 3 and Knuckles together. Really glad again to have this physically. Love this particular game. And I was looking, and I've got room in my collection because I want to go for 10 physical copies of Sega Genesis games, because I already have Castlevania Bloodlines, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Streets of Rage 2. So I got room for 3 more. And I want Sonic and Knuckles, Phantasy Star 4, and Gunstar Heroes. Gunstar Heroes is ridiculously expensive, as I saw at the convention. It was running for anywhere $120 to $150 complete in box in the clamshell case. And Phantasy Star 4, I saw that complete in box. At that point, they were only releasing stuff in cardboard boxes. I only saw that complete in box for like a couple times, and it was like $200. I want the clamshell ones. Thankfully, CustomGameCases.com offers the clamshell versions of not only Phantasy Star 4, but also Sonic and Knuckles. I'm going to go to them for those so that all I'll need to do is get the manual and the physical game cartridge for Phantasy Star 4 and Sonic and Knuckles. That will complete that. And I will then be very close, hopefully, to completing the Super Nintendo one, which that's going to be another future video. But that overall was my Midwest Gaming Classic experience. It was a fantastic time, ran by fantastic volunteers, such as the great Tiger Chainsaw, who not only helped with the running of the bonus stage area where JRPG Pursuit was located, but also he runs a fantastic channel that I cannot recommend enough for not only hidden gems, but also interviews with some developers and whatnot. I would absolutely recommend it. But let me know in the comments section below which of your pickups you felt was your favorite. Have you heard of JRPG Pursuit? Have you been to a convention, and what were some of your favorite experiences? Again, let me know, comment section below. Love to start a dialogue with you guys. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a great day.